So this is the Econ in the News training from us at MRU. If you don't know MRU, MRU is a nonprofit. We do free resources, all sorts of resources, just to increase the level of econ understanding and econ literacy in the public. And so this, this session is primarily focused on, okay, how can we bring current events to the classroom? And so sort of the resource we'll be showcasing here is EconInbox, which is an MRU service that provides timely like news articles and podcasts for teachers. But there's much more to this training just than beyond EconInbox. All right, so this is me. If for those of you that I know some of the people on the call, seems like, but for those of you that don't know me, I'm the curriculum designer at MRU. I don't know. I've been here for about a year now, so I guess I'm not new anymore. Although it feels like I'm still new. Right. Okay, so we always. So why should we use news as an example? And I think we all know we should use them, or the value of using them. But just to be on the same page, you really want to have that aha moment where the students can see, all right, here's how the thing I'm learning in my class applies to the real world. Okay, we're learning about monetary policy. Okay, we can see the Fed conducting monetary policy, or okay, we're learning about inflation. We can see inflation out there, and so that's really the holy grail, and that's sort of the goal of almost any learning is they learn something in the classroom and they're really able to apply it to their real world experience. For me, whenever I'm using news in my classrooms, I find it's great for discussion as well. Where okay, Silicon Valley Bank collapses. All right, so let's open the class with Silicon Valley Bank. The students have heard about it. The students have questions. The students want to know, and so automatically there's this back and forth. Hey, professor, what about this? Hey, what about this? The de-dollarization that just happened. I have a lot of students, where I'm teaching that are from overseas, and so lots of questions about de-dollarization, and really, it prompts that organic learning. All right, so if we can, if we could do this, this is potentially, if we can incorporate these current events into teaching, this is potentially a really powerful tool. So where do you get examples? You can bring them in from your personal life. Of course, you could see something on social media. Often we'll see something on, okay, I sort of remember, all right, I want to bring this up in class. One of my favorite examples, and this may be not as applicable depending on what level of econ you're teaching. One of my favorite examples is if you're familiar with the FTX collapse, this crypto exchange that collapsed. The founder, Sam Bankman-Fried, there's a podcast interview with him where he says my utility function is not concave. My utility function is linear. So if you've ever taught utility functions and students are like, what is this utility function? How does it apply to me? How does it represent preferences? So like when I saw that, I was like, oh, what a gold mine. There's an actual person in the wild talking about their utility function. So I was like, all right, I got to clip this and bring it to class. All right, so you can there's all sorts of places that you can get examples, and it's just a matter of sort of having that mindset of, all right, I'm always on the hunt for things that you can pull into class. So we're sort of as econ teachers, we're sort of already like this, where you're always thinking about economics and pointing out. Maybe your spouses get tired of you pointing out econ concepts when you're together. I know mine does. Well, my spouse is just generally tired and fed up with me in general, but especially the econ part. Okay, so does anybody have any fun examples that you've used recently that you'd like to share? You can go ahead and share it in the chat. Just make sure there in the chat that it's set to everyone, so everyone can see your examples. Does anybody have anything that they used recently? Oh, the closing of the Phantom of the Opera and Factor Markets. Can you elaborate, Joanne?
We're in the midst of Factor Markets, just started those, and our high school musical is ending on April 28th, right before AP exams. So I've got a lot of kids that are concerned about musical, and just talking about the whole idea that after running for so long, it began to really lose a lot of interest when they announced that they were closing. There's a big resurgence in terms of the demand and what impact that would have on the people that were involved in fact or Phantom of the Opera, in terms of like all of those musicians and all of those kind of things, increasing cost because that show is much more expensive than say Hamilton or something like that in terms of the scenery and all of those.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, yeah. That's great. Are you in New York or?
No, I'm in Harrisburg, so we're only about 2.5, 3 hours away. So and again, I've got a lot of musical kids in our high school musical, so that's very relevant to them.
That's great. Fiona is using newspaper examples to draw demand and supply curves. Okay. There's lots of good examples for demand and supply. Like I said, the Silicon Valley Bank collapse was, at least great for me to teach like fractional reserve banking to students, and then I'm not sure if they understood like bond prices, but taught a little bit about bond prices. All right. Okay. Oops, sorry. So this is my personal favorite example to sort of use is to teach opportunity cost, is to talk about movies that you may have walked out of, or movies that you wish you would have walked out of. And so, I always talk about this. This is a movie I walked out of. I don't know if anybody remembers it, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. This movie is awful, in my opinion. Not as good as the Willy Wonka version of it from the 70s. And then, oh, okay, Shrink, Jason. Hey, Jason Rath. Good to see you, Jason Rath. I was just Jason Rath from Sacramento. I was just in Sacramento last weekend. Jason. Had a great time up there. Went to watch the Kings playoff game. I didn't go to the game, but I went downtown just to see all the madness. It was quite fun. All right, shrinkflation. Okay. Oh, Jason, actually, maybe I'll let you talk. Do you have an example of shrinkflation specifically with food? We have like the smaller packaging. Ah, okay. So you have like I don't know if you have like specifically you could show like the smaller cereal boxes, or like how there's less in maybe the same size. But yeah, that's a great one. So I mean, this is a great example of opportunity cost, where you decide, when I went to see Inherent Vice, I took my wife, we went to see Inherent Vice. And this is like, if you don't know this movie, it's like a real art house movie. And the movie was showing in a mall, and my wife just, after about 20 minutes, she just walked out and went shopping. She decided, her time was more valuable spent, shopping than watching this movie. So this is often a great way to show opportunity cost. I specifically do it with TV shows. Because not all students have movie going is less of a activity these days, but everyone has usually watched a TV show or a Netflix series, and they have that experience of wishing they had given up on it. Like the TV show jumps the shark and has a couple bad seasons, and so this is the one I really use with my students, where I say, all right, what TV show have you given up on? What do I use for absolute and comparative advantage? What I tend to use for absolute and comparative advantage is just sort of thinking of particularly talented individuals. So the example I always use with that is like thinking about a LeBron James and how valuable his time is, And would it make sense for him to do all these other activities that he's maybe very good at? But he's giving up a lot by doing that because he can make money, much more money elsewhere. So typically that's my example with comparative and an absolute advantage. And then there's also like the classic example of like the desert island with, fishing and coconuts is another just sort of classic standard example for absolute and comparative advantage. Okay. Anybody have a TV show that we should give up on, that we should avoid? Do they want to put in the chat? TV show that goes south? The one I have in the slides is Stranger Things, but I hear it's gotten good. I hear it got good again. So I don't know if this is actually valuable. I hear season 4 is good. Okay, there's just another example. Oh, The Good Place. People love The Good Place. I only watched one episode of The Good Place, and I thought it was so terrible that I didn't watch anymore. But there's a famous philosophy. There's a famous philosophy example of the trolley problem. I don't know if you're familiar with the trolley problem, where there's a trolley going down the tracks, and you can pull a lever, and it kills one person. And if you don't pull the lever, it kills 5 people. And so this is the trolley problem. It's like a classic example in philosophy. So it's the same, like moral dilemma. Like, if you act, you're like technically killing somebody, but if you don't act, 5 people will die. Anyways, they had a whole Good Place about the trolley problem, and I was so disappointed in how it was handled. So I've heard the show is good, Sandra. I've heard the show's good. Other people have told me to watch the show, but I just couldn't get past the how they handled that trolley problem, that episode. Okay, all right. So just to give you an example of how you might be able to use. We've already talked about, some examples previously, but how you might use something in the classroom. So, the baby formula shortage, was all over the news, last summer, and you can use this to teach. You could have used this to teach multiple different concepts in economics. You could use it to teach supply shifts, international trade, market power, and so I have some examples of that. So the initial shortage of baby formula was caused because a factory shut down. And so you have a factory shuts down, supply curve shifts back. And if prices are sticky, so if prices remain at that lower or that initial equilibrium price, then a shortage will develop. So just explaining the initial shortage, we could use our simple supply and demand framework. If you're teaching international trade, there's effectively really, really high tariffs and strict regulations. Basically, the only baby formula that we're allowed to buy in the US has to be from the US. We can't really buy foreign baby formula. And so if you're teaching international trade, you should know that if we have trade, if the world price of baby formula is below our domestic price, well, then we'd be way out here at this equilibrium with a much higher quantity and lower price, but we're stuck back at this equilibrium because of the restrictions. There's also a significant amount of market power in the baby formula market. So I think there's like 3. I think there's maybe like 3 companies that do baby formula in the US. And so this is classic market concentration. And so if you're teaching monopoly or market concentration, again, the monopoly quantity will be lower than the perfectly competitive quantity. So another reason why, the quantity might be lower in the market. So that you could use that example to teach multiple different concepts. Let me check the chat here. Sandra says, students take a picture of them using economic justify their choice. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. There's a great episode of Planet Money where they take like econ policies that all look like that, whatever 90% or more of economists agree on, and turn it into like a political platform, and you realize that nobody would ever vote for it, because while they make economic sense, like from an economic theory sense, like people don't like them, or they don't sound good. I think like one of them is getting rid of the the mortgage interest deduction for homeowners is effectively a subsidy to homeowners instead of renters. And so all economists are like, why are we subsidizing homeowners at the expense of renters? But of course, no homeowner would vote for, getting rid of the subsidy. So it's just an example of like, the difference between politics and economics. What makes sense from an economic perspective, is not necessarily going to get you elected. I don't know if your students are always asking you this. We'll learn some economic concept and it's very clear sort of what the right policy would be. And my students are like, well, how come politicians don't, pursue this policy? Then I have to explain, okay, there are different incentives. Politicians' incentives are to get elected and to get reelected. It's not necessarily the economic, it's not necessarily to do what makes, economic sense, or at least economic sense in terms of, what econ theory would predict. Okay. All right. So that's an example and of how you might use a topic from the news in your classroom. And if you see something good, you shouldn't shy away from using it in your classroom, even if it doesn't directly relate to what you're currently teaching. And so if you've already taught it, this would be an example of space repetition where, all right, the number of times students see something, the more likely they are to retain it. So, if you can do elasticity, say, for example, like throughout the course, keep bringing it up, it's more likely that the students will retain that information. So if you've already covered something, but you see a news article or something has happened, that's a great example. Don't be shy about using it. Or even if you're like going to cover it later, I often will, if something happens, I'll bring it into class, like, hey, we'll cover this later, but let's just, talk a little bit about it right now. Okay. Oh, you have a news section. Fiona says she has a news section on Brightspace. Brightspace is a LMS. I didn't know anybody else use Brightspace. I used to use Brightspace at my old university. I thought was the only place to use Brightspace. It's actually I liked Brightspace better than what I currently use at my university. Okay, so you can bring this in sort of at any time. Don't feel shy. All right, so here are some current events from EconInbox. Just want to see how we could use this, or what econ concept could we connect this to. So this is a headline. There's a motel room that is 19% more expensive than the other rooms at the same motel, same exact room setup. But there was a couple on the lam. So I think it was like a prison guard and a prisoner that had escaped and were on the lam, and they stayed in this motel room and they were caught in this motel room. And then the price of that room spiked by 19%. So any ideas how we might be able to use this in the classroom? Let's go ahead and put it in the chat. What concept we could use to teach this? Prestige pricing. Yeah. Andy says demand shifts. Yeah, so generally, this is sort of classic example of a demand shift in terms of the demand for this specific room because of this event has now shifted out. And if demand shifts out, well, then we're going to have, higher prices. I mean, you could talk about it as like prestige pricing as well. There's some sort of, prestige associated with this room. Here's another example. Here's another fun example. Okay. $27 beers push New York airports to crack down on concession prices. So apparently beer cost $27 in the New York airport. I don't know. I haven't been through the New York airport in a long time. How might we use what concept might we connect this to? Yeah, monopoly pricing. Okay. Yeah, and Sandra's saying elasticity of demand as well. Yeah. Right. Yes. So yeah, all of these are great. So Joanne, Fiona, Sandra, these are all perfect. So think of these are like it's like monopolistic competition, or like, there's only a few places, offering beer. So there's a lack of competition, or there's monopoly. So the firms have pricing power. When there's pricing power, we're going to see higher prices. We're especially going to see higher prices when there is inelastic demand. So Sandra's saying the factors, affecting elasticity of demand. So this will be, very inelastic demand likely for beer. Like the people who want beer when they're traveling are really going to want beer. They're going to be very price insensitive. A lot of them are probably corporate travelers. And so corporate travelers typically have like the company credit card. So they're not even the ones paying. This will lead to even less elasticity, or especially people that need, whatever, some alcohol to relax before a flight. So yeah, all of these are like perfect example, although maybe not appropriate for the high school audience. Okay, all right. So let's talk. So we've hopefully sold you on, all right, and it seems like everyone on the call is already, sort of using news to some extent in their classrooms. But we want to just talk through some potential issues and solutions. So where do you find content? Okay. So like I said, you can sort of make a mental note of, things. Was it Sandra who says she puts it in Brightspace, or was that Fiona who says, when she sees something, she puts it on the Brightspace? You can use, the various podcasts. There's the NPR ones, the Planet Money Indicator. Freakonomics is longer, but sometimes it's good. Econ Talk as well. Trying to think of the other econ podcasts I listen to. There's a Bloomberg one that I listen to. Here we have, here's EconInbox. And so for those of you that are not familiar with EconInbox, essentially what we do with EconInbox is you tell us what you're teaching and what weeks you're teaching it. And then we send you an email that will detail like that. Basically, the email is tailored to what you're teaching that week. Okay. And so this is the inflation, say, example. So like, say you were teaching inflation, so it'll give you some news articles, recent news articles. So we sort of try to make it a mix of very recent news articles, like within the last 3 to 6 months. And then sort of like greatest hits, like, all right, this is just a, wonderful article. So you'll get some news articles. Okay, so I'm teaching inflation. Let me look through these news articles. Is there anything that I can use here? Okay. So here's like the shrinkflation. So if you're looking for a specific shrinkflation example, you'll be able to use that. And then, so we have the news articles, and then we have, sort of other things that might be useful. For here, we have some graphics. So this is like the famous chart showing what things have gone up in price, what things have gone down in price over time. Some videos, and then podcasts as well. And then also some additional resources down here. So, just a variety of different resources, news, videos, podcasts, and again, you don't have to use them all. It's just like, here's some things that are recent and or great that we recommend, use them as you like. All right, so that's basically what EconInbox is. If you're not familiar, it seems like many of you are familiar, and that's great. Okay, so does anybody else have any other examples, or not examples, but any other places that they typically get good econ examples from that they'd like to share to the other teachers that are on the call? Just go ahead and put it in the chat if you have other places you like to go. Let's see what econ podcasts I have. Said Econ Talk I use. Oh, Econ Video. What is this? Oh, yes, the Econ Media Library. Yeah, yes. Oh, yeah, here's the trolley problem. Here's just talking about the trolley problem. Yeah, so this is the Econ Media Library has a bunch of like current events. Right? Morning Brew, yes, I subscribe to Morning Brew as well. It's a nice one to start with. Okay. All right. So my issue with the good place and the trolley problem was more in the writing than the example. It's a great example, but I thought in the writing it should end. If you're doing an episode on the trolley problem, it should end with an actual trolley problem where the people have to, there's a trolley problem in real life. I just can't believe that the writers of the show didn't take advantage of that. Okay. All right. So we have Morning Brew. We have the Econ Media Library, which are all great resources. I also do there's a Quartz Daily Brief that I also subscribe to. All right. So now that you have the content, how do you contextualize it, or how do you use it specifically in the classroom? Okay. And so for EconInbox, it comes already categorized. So when we went here, this was all in inflation. So it already categorizes it for you. It says, all right, you're teaching supply and demand, or you're teaching exchange rates or whatever. So here are articles related to that. So at least on the EconInbox side, it tells you, this is the topic that it's good for. All right. For the other ones, you sort of have to figure it out. All right, where, which topic does this article go with? And then for the type of resource, this is just what I do. So this is not I don't know, this is not what I don't know, tested in some lab is the best way to do things, but this is just, my personal setup. And so, if it's something where I can ask the students a question or we can have a bit of a discussion going, I'll sort of use that to open the class. At EconInbox, we will often make worksheets to go with the articles. And so if you have something like that, you could use that as an in-class activity. I will often use those as test questions. So, if I assign something or we talk about an article, I will then usually on the exam have sort of a test question based on it. So Fiona's asking, how do you get the students to read it independently? Yeah, so you can do group discussions where the students have to read it. You can also do some sort of commitment device. I have pop quizzes in my class for readings I assign. Sometimes you can have the students get in groups and sort of summarize the article or summarize different parts of the article. All right. So, okay. So if you can ask a question, I use it as a bell ringer. If it's some sort of worksheet, I'll use it as in-class activity, or I'll use it on a test. For podcasts, so if there's a really good podcast, I use that as a reading outside the classroom. So I use that as, I say, I always, I always make a joke. I said, all right, here's the podcast that's assigned, read it on your own. You can, listen to it on the way to class. You can put it on at a party this weekend and you can all listen to it. Whatever, however you want to listen to it. You can listen to it at 1.5 speed. And then I usually have pop quizzes just to make sure they're actually listening to it. And then we'll have a discussion about it in class. But I always find you can't really play a podcast in a class. It's so awkward. I mean, it's just super awkward because no one knows where to look. And so it's just sort of, there's voice coming and we're all just sort of, so I always have it done outside of the classroom. Short, fun videos you can play in class. And then a longer video would be, too long to play in class. I would use that as a reading. So that's just personally how I sort of use things. But again, whatever works. Okay. All right. So then this is perhaps, the most difficult is, how do you get the students to care? Because, things that I care about, say I'm trying to think of some econ news that happened lately, or I'm paying attention to what's going on with with inflation. I'm paying close attention. I may really care about this, but the students oftentimes they're just sort of whatever. This is not relevant. To my particular to what's going on with me. I care about whatever, this girl or my friends or, you know, whatever the sport I'm doing. And so this is often difficult. Like even that baby formula example, it's like, hey, look, there's this massive baby formula shortage. It's a huge deal. People can't get formula for their kids. You know, many students are like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like, I'm not a baby. Like, what is this? How does this affect me? Maybe if they have a sibling that's young. So this can be difficult. And so oftentimes, you know, people love to talk about themselves. And so I try to frame questions or frame the topic, you know, to make it about them. So if we're talking about inflation, it's like, okay, what is the most you paid for gas? Or what is an item that you've noticed that's been affected by, say, shrinkflation or shrimpflation? Or what is something that you can believe what you paid for? Or like if we're talking about GDP, you may say something like, all right, you're in charge of a country. How would you tell if its citizens are doing well? How would you measure the well-being of that country? So this is my favorite one to teach. Let me see. Let me hop on the. So I asked the students, you know, to open the class. I asked the students. I asked, you know, what company do you hate? So I always ask this, and then I get answers from the students. So we can just try this right now. Let's see if it works. Sometimes it works. Usually it works, but sometimes it doesn't. So let's try this right now. So just go ahead and put in the chat, what company do you dislike, or which company you're like, man, I can't stand this particular company. Oh man, Loblaws. I don't know what Loblaws is. Oh, it's Canadian. Okay. It's a grocery store in Canada. Okay. All right. So I'll put it here. We'll see. Okay. What else? Do you have any other companies that we don't like? Just Loblaws? Just some BP. British Petroleum. There we go. Oh, it's huge, diversified, and owned by a wealthy family in Canada. Okay. All right. I'm gonna sort of move it over here. All right. We got BP. We got Loblaws. A few other ones. Sort of put the classic ones that we get in. Classic ones that I will get a lot is the cable company. And the other one I get, since I teach at college, is the on-campus food. These are the ones I always get. All right. Any other ones? Any other companies? You need oh, SpaceX. Okay, that's interesting. Where would I put SpaceX? I put SpaceX on this side. Okay. And so when I do this exercise, so I'm like asking the students, all right, what company do you hate? They say whatever company they don't like. We sort of talk about, you know, why they don't like that company, some funny stories that usually come out. And then what I'm doing on the board is I'm putting the companies kind of in one of two columns. So there's this column over here and this column over here. And so I don't know enough about Loblaws to know where to put it really. But basically what I'm doing is I'm dividing the companies by market power. So these are companies with a significant amount of market power, monopoly power often. And these are companies that don't have monopoly power. So I don't really know where to put SpaceX since they're sort of like the only company. I guess there's some other competitors, but they're not really a consumer-facing company. So it's sort of difficult to, I don't know where to categorize them, but usually I'll have something like, I don't know, something like Nike will be over here usually. Okay. But what often happens is most of the companies that people don't like have a significant amount of market power, you know, or some sort of, you know, monopoly type power going on. And of course, so then we go into a discussion of monopolies, and monopolies are able to charge higher prices or offer worse personal service because of that market power, whereas competitive companies cannot. And so this is just sort of a nice like jumping off point that sort of gets the students you know, involved in, you know, talking about, you know, various companies that they don't like and sort of making it, you know, more. Okay. So you can use check-ins in this way, framing about the students. There is this sit protocol, where you can give the students an article that they have to, read in class, and then they have to write down what is significant, interesting, and troubling about the article. Again, putting the onus on them to figure out, all right, how does this relate to me? What do I find significant? What do I find interesting? What is, troubling to me about this article? If you find pictures from news articles, you can do something similar. What do you see in the picture? What does it make you think about? What are you wondering? Like, what question do you have related to it? You could do something similar. If you do find pictures that sort of relate to econ concepts. Okay. You could do a sort of text version of that. Say, all right, here's what I read or I saw in this article, and this is what I'm wondering. So you can basically ask for feedback from the articles, like, okay, what does this make you wonder about? And again, sort of lets the students think, lets it make it a little bit more about themselves. Another thing you can do is you can do what I call high leverage assignments. You can try to think of the various topics that you're teaching and sort of design a high leverage assignment. And so these are some examples of what I call high leverage assignments. And like if you think back to your high school experience or your college experience, and you think about what project really stayed with you, it's often, some sort of group project or some sort of video or some sort of thing you made. That's usually what, what stays with you. And so yeah, I'll go over Thanks 1000 in a second. So you can have the students make a video related to one of the topics. When I was teaching smaller classes, I would have the students get in groups and make like a podcast. Since we were like listening to podcasts throughout the semester, I said, all right, now it's your turn to make, Planet Money style podcast. You can have debates. So I'll often like stage debates. This is usually in my urban economics class. We'll do this. Then Thanks 1000 is a fun project. Here's the doc for it. Here's the brief for it. And so there's this book by A.J. Jacobs, where he thanks 1,000 people that are involved in the production of his morning cup of coffee. So if you think of any item, that you use, that you like, there's thousands of people, involved in making that, because of specialization, because of trade all over the world, that usually combine to bring you that item. And so he thanked 1,000. He went like all through the supply chain and thanked 1,000. So I sort of adapted this for my classes. And so I always have the students think of a product they love and thank 3 people involved in the production. Like go out into the community, find 3 different people that were involved in making this and thank them. And, so you can modify that version of the assignment however you like. Usually I have them do like a brief description and some sort of proof that they thank them, and then like a half-page reflection. And I tell them, try to make 2 of them in person. You can, email, tweet, or DM one of the people, but try to actually go and thank them in person. This is a super fun assignment. Like the students always like it. Lots of good things always happen. Usually good things always happen. Like I had one student who like started like a legitimate correspondence with a famous author that she liked. I had another student who got his picture up in the wall of the car dealership. So he like goes in there and thanks them and say, oh, we got to take a picture of you. And they put them up on the wall of the car dealership. I had another student get free tickets to a Padres game, San Diego Padres game. So it's like it's a good way to get the students thinking about all the different actual like humans involved in production. And then, also gets them out there talking to people. This is another one that I like to do, where I have them interview a grandparent or someone elderly about, what was the standard of living when they were the student's age. Like, all right, have the grandparent think back to 16 or 17 years old, like what did their daily life look like? There's no washing machines oftentimes, or they had to wash things hand wash things. Obviously, there's no computers, no iPhones. I have them ask things like, okay, did you have fresh fruit? Like what do the grocery stores look like? Just to think of how the standard of living has really changed over their grandparents' lifetime. That's good for teaching like GDP or economic growth. But I mean, there's all types of assignments. Like really, like I think those things that get students out there, like talking to people, can be hugely beneficial and like really stick with them. And it's just a matter of creativity, like thinking about what topic you're covering and seeing if you can come up with one of those types of assignments. There's another one where I have the like entrepreneur, like interview somebody who started a business or interview a business person about, their types of costs. If you're teaching, cost structure of firms. Okay. Now you can also ask for students. So you can also ask for students to submit articles. So, throughout this talk, we've said, all right, you're bringing the articles to the students, but the students can bring you the articles or send you the articles. And so the way you can do this is you can basically assign students, because if you do this, you say, hey, you just make this assignment throughout the semester, the students are all going to do it at the end of the semester. So you can assign the students to a week. Hey, it's your week to find an article. You can make it extra credit. Again, if you make it extra credit, you may get it all at the end of the semester. So whenever I do this, I usually do like exploding extra credit where, it's worth the highest number of points at the beginning of the semester. And then it goes down, like the number of extra points you get go down as the semester goes on. So they're incentivized to turn it in earlier in the semester. So that way you sort of get a steady stream of the articles. But again, you're just trying to get the students, try to incentivize the students to bring in an article. Okay. And if you ever find anything good, so if you ever find any good news articles that you think we should put in EconInbox, you can always email those to me, and we'll put them in EconInbox and give you a shout out as well as like, hey, thanks to so-and-so for bringing this article to our attention. So we're always looking for EconInbox articles. Generally, we're probably adding like 5 articles a week. So we have like a whole, behind the scenes, we have, a couple different people always on the lookout. And then, we sort of add them as they come in. And then we actually tweet them out too. If you follow us on Twitter, MR University, we'll usually tweet out the articles that we added that week if you're interested for like just to see the very, very latest. Okay, so another aspect of EconInbox that I just want to mention is that it is adjustable. So you can set it to where you get the news articles a week ahead of time, 2 weeks ahead of time. I personally use EconInbox. I typically don't have time during the semester to I can bring something up to my students like at the beginning of class. But in terms of like actually incorporating it into my slides or homework, I usually like to do that ahead of time. So I'll usually go through EconInbox before the semester. Like I'll go through last semester's EconInbox to see, all right, is there stuff I want to pull out and add this semester? So however you want to use it, it is adjustable. All right. Okay, so that's about all I have for y'all on incorporating news into the classroom. If you'd like to attend a future event, visit our teacher trainings page linked in the description. Sign up for EconInbox here, or check out our playlist of videos aligned to CEE economic standards.